Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna, and welcome to another episode of your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Leslie Bosch. Leslie is a developmental psychologist and a national board certified health and wellness coach. Dr. Leslie received her training as an integrative wellness coach from Andrew Weil Center for the Integrative Medicine. Dr. Leslie helps high-achieving women activate new levels of vibrancy so they can thrive despite challenges. She's such an inspiring lady. She helps clients focus on skills such as self-care, letting go of things that no longer serve them, fueling their efforts with positive emotions and self-kindness. And we have a really good discussion around stress management, and I know you're going to get a lot out of this episode. So Leslie, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's a real privilege to be on the show. I'm so delighted by the point of your podcast, and I'm just hoping that I too can add to the inspiration that you're hoping to provide for your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you can from everything that I know about you so far. And I know that you're a developmental psychologist, and you've been that for a number of years, actually, haven't you? How long have you been doing?
Yes, actually, I've been a developmental psychologist for over 15 years.
Wow.
And so.
Yeah, lots of experience. And so, as you know, the podcast is around sharing stories, and I know you do some really cool stuff and helping a lot of people out there. And obviously you mentioned about inspiration, and I know that you know, everybody's life's not perfect. We touched on that just before we clicked record. You know, I think sometimes that in this social media digital age, we believe that there's all these perfect people out there. So I'd really invite you to sort of share how you do some really good coaching around a number of different sort of holistic topics, really, I suppose. But how did you get to be doing all of this good stuff that you're doing today? How did it all start?
Well, before I became a coach, like many Americans, I was working long hours in a very demanding job. And unfortunately, I was also mismanaging my stress. I was eating lots of junk food. I wasn't exercising. I was sleeping poorly. I was snapping at my husband because I was tense all the time. And heaven knows I wasn't having any fun. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was unintentionally trading my well-being, my health, and my relationship satisfaction for success in my career.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I came across and enrolled in a wellness class offered through the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, where I learned about an integrative approach to health. And briefly, an integrative approach to health recognizes the interdependence of 7 core areas of health, including sleep, nutrition, movement, relationships, resilience, spirituality, and environment. So as you can imagine, during the course, I was encouraged to essentially clean up my act in all these 7 core areas of health, which I did. And after several months of concerted effort, I began to feel better. I lost some weight. I felt more relaxed. I felt more connected to my husband, more purposeful and productive again. And I was so happy with my lifestyle changes that I took my efforts to the next level and became a national board certified health and wellness coach. So now I work with others to improve the quality of their lives too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think sometimes when we go through these things, what was your sort of wake-up call? Because I think there's always a kind of moment, isn't there, where you kind of take a step back and think, hold on, if I continue on this path, this isn't going to, So what was kind of yours? Because I think, for people listening who might relate to a lot of what you've said, especially like the burnout of, maybe working in the corporate job and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes, I know it sounds cheesy to say the rat race, but we are, aren't we? We're keeping up with everything with, our house and our lifestyle, and we're on this journey all the time, but sometimes there is like a pivotal moment that wakes you up. What was yours?
Well, for me, it was definitely just that I think what it really was I got back to some blood work, and I saw that my blood sugars was rising, that my cortisol was rising, that I was gaining a lot of weight. And like I mentioned, I certainly was not happy in my relationship. So for me, it was pretty much that,
Yeah.
that I was really starting to experience the physical manifestations of, like what you said so well, burnout, and just not taking care of all these other facets in my life that were requiring my attention. I started putting all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like the health thing of the, like you say, like the results of the bloods. Because I think, everybody since the pandemic, people are realizing that their job's not for life, or there's a lot more stress, and the economy is changing, everything's costing more, fuel prices have been increasing, there's all this pressure at the moment, and the major people who are feeling like that, where they're, when they really question themselves, they're not happy, or they have, like you say, I think a lot of people put on weight in the pandemic because just not been taking care of themselves as much, or maybe they've started working at home in their job, or and just their whole kind of lifestyle has changed a little bit. What kind of advice would you give them as like the first steps to kind of recognizing that and sort of taking action?
Well, one of the things that I really sort of wanted to talk about today was really, like, again, the stress management piece. So for me, one of the biggest things, the biggest changes that I made to my lifestyle was in the area of resilience and stress management, because in fact, I didn't really, again, even know that stress management was a thing. So for me, this was a huge, like, what? I'm supposed to be doing something to manage this? There are things that I can do, because I pretty much just thought that stress was a part of life. I remember the first time my husband sort of said to me, I don't think you realize how much pressure you're putting on yourself. And for me, that was like, what do you mean putting on myself? I don't have a choice. These are just things I have to do. So again, I want to talk a little bit about those kinds of beliefs that we have: should thoughts, perfectionistic thoughts, people-pleasing thoughts, that can really sort of lock us in to some of these patterns of behavior that really can intensify and, compound our stress levels.
Yeah. Absolutely, because I think it's sometimes stress is like silent, isn't it? And then it suddenly creeps up on us.
Yes.
The amount of times I remember saying, I'm not stressed, in a really stressed manner. Do you know what I mean? So it can, and again, I think it's been a real stressful few years for people. So I think anybody can relate to feeling stressed, or any kind of like anxiety around just life, just life in general.
Yeah. And the medical profession is really coming to understand that this kind of chronic stress really is what's underpinning most of these chronic illnesses that take people out kind of prematurely, like high blood pressure, heart attacks, high blood sugar, which can really lead to some really corrosive effects for your health. So they really are beginning to understand, like you mentioned, this is kind of an invisible thing, that people didn't really know, that this invisible thing of how well this chronic stress was really impacting people's health in the long run. With stress, stress it's not neither good nor bad. It just is. It's a thing that we all cope with. But some stress is good. They call it eustress. And this is the kind of stress that gets us excited about our day and makes us want to get out of bed and manage and tackle the challenges that we're presented with. Then there's another kind of stress, which is called distress, which really is more like this chronic stress that doesn't relent, that usually has a lot to do with things that we can't control. And this can become very challenging because we can feel very frustrated in our efforts to sort of bring our stress levels down. So one of the biggest things I learned is that you really want kind of what they call that heart rate variability, which is where it's okay for a stress response to come on, but then you want it to bring it back down. For me, I think about it in terms of driving your car. You know how to pour on the gas and you know how to apply the brake. So if you can understand how to work with your nervous system, basically to bring, to up level your engagement, your motivation, and those types of things to meet the demands, that's great. And then if you can apply the brake, at the end, when you're done, when it's no longer necessary, like when you're trying to have your dinner with your family, you're trying to wind down for bed, you're trying to get a good night's rest, when you can bring your stress level back down, apply the brake, as it were, then you are really basically coping effectively with stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, when you were saying all of that, I could really relate to it, because when I went through my difficult journey, although I think sometimes the healing journey is always, it never really goes. I mean, it's everything is a lot more peaceful now. But I think when you go through something that is quite crazy, it kind of stays with you to a certain extent.
Yes.
But when it was at its peak, and I had a lot of litigation and court hearings that seemed never ending, I was on high alert, anxiety, stress all the time. I think the first step was recognizing that, because there was a part of me that was in denial for a period of time, but then recognizing it, and taking, like you say, exactly what you said, like taking actions to, I had to take actions to, because I noticed I wasn't sleeping very well, probably because I was on this journey of like thinking about all the scenarios that could happen at the next hearing, even if the hearing was 6 weeks away, so I had to be really proactive in this routine that I did for going to bed and sleep, because I was determined, and there's no, anybody listening to this who might take medication, it's no criticism to anybody that does, but I was determined not to. And I think that was just because I'd worked for Pfizer in the corporate world and I was really I really wanted to not take medication. And then I was also anxious about, because I was in court hearings, that people the eyes were on me as a good mother. So I was really determined that there was going to be no kind of documentation about how I could be taking this therapy or this therapy for what, I wanted to deal with it within myself. And that was actually causing even more stress. So I was really proactive with a lot of holistic stuff. And I think probably by listening to people like yourself, because I think going onto podcasts and YouTube and looking at ways that you can manage stress as a whole, and steps that you can do by being proactive to achieve that, really. And mine ended up being like meditation. I don't know if there's anything that in particular, and I actually used to think meditation was all woo-woo. I was just, because I was from the pharmaceutical world, I was like, meditation, that's all that spiritual rubbish. Do you know what I mean? I was really like that. But then I thought, actually, I've got to give this a go, because I keep hearing about it and I was curious. And I often say now to people, I meditate daily. If I don't meditate on a daily basis, I feel like I've missed out. And if I don't have a bath at the end of an evening, because I don't have the bath really to clean myself, it's more of this like step-by-step winding down for the day. Because I think without any kind of trauma or stresses, we're living in this digital age, aren't we, where we can't turn off to a WhatsApp message or a ping on our phone. And we kind of really need to kind of wind ourselves or switch our mind off before we rest at night.
Absolutely. You said so many things that are important there. Absolutely. So one of the first things to really do is to come to understand that with any kind of stress management or resilience practice, what you're really doing there is trying to manage your mind. A lot of people are really shocked as I was, to discover that they have a mind, and that, again, it's their job to manage their mind, just like it's their job to manage their home, to manage their pets, to manage their children, to manage their relationships, to manage their time. They really have a mind, and they need to manage their mind, because if they let their mind manage them, they could be really sorry and end up in a real world of hurt, because a lot of times your mind can really run away with you and take you to some really dark and unhelpful places. Your mind can also be for you an extreme source of support and resourcefulness, but you have to make sure that you're using your mind effectively. And that's one of the biggest things for me that meditation does for you. Meditation helps you achieve what scholars call metacognition, and that's thinking about thinking. So essentially here we want to be as critical of our thoughts as we would be critical of other people's thoughts. A lot of times we get wholly identified with our thoughts. Like, in other words, we don't see that we're a person having thoughts. We think we are our thoughts. So we have to begin to see that, like, oh, I'm a person who's having this thought. Now I can look at this thought and decide if this thought is accurate, if it's serving me well, if doing this kind of thinking right now is a good idea. So like the perfect thing you talked about, you're running all those hypotheticals in an effort to try and get ahead of some nonsense that might be coming down the road. That is one of the big skills of our mind. We can run hypotheticals and we can think about a variety of scenarios. But we also have to be careful that we're not catastrophizing, because catastrophizing will scare us to death. We can't really tell the difference between a thought that we're having and a reality that is here or might be coming. So it's really important to be able to keep an eye on your thoughts.
Definitely. And I know I definitely experienced that. And I think it is so important, because it can escalate, can't it, into, like you say, into this unrealistic reality. And that's what anxiety does, or stress goes to anxiety. And
can jump to the worst case scenarios
that
probably have a very low probability of happening. But nonetheless, for us, can feel very like right now, it's going to happen any minute now, right? Because again, our minds can be so, they can create that reality so fully for us in our imagination, even though in our reality, we're okay. There's nothing like that going on.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, you know, all of this with your years of, you know, the whole psychology. So psychology has really always interested me. It's something that, because I studied microbiology at university, because I naively, when I was 17, wanted to find the cure for AIDS. I look back and laugh at myself. And so I did lab work, but it wasn't really for me. And then moved into the pharmaceutical industry, because I am a real people person, and I loved being, you know, kind of in that sales environment, I suppose. But of course, running my own business has just given me the freedom and being able to help people. And it's funny how you look back and evolve, but psychology always interested me, because when I was at university, I remember the medics used to come to the microbiology part, and they always used to do psychology. It just, you know, I hung around with people who did psychology. It's always really interested me, just as NLP and different things have as well.
Yes, I love NLP as well, because really, again, that's looking at your thoughts and then working with those thoughts. So the process that I wanted to share with you today for conquering feelings of overwhelm is essentially very closely tied to what we're talking about, which is it's kind of a 3-step process. And in the first step, really, the first step is to recognize and acknowledge where feelings of overwhelm come from. And essentially, based on what we're talking about, we really are saying that feelings of overwhelm don't come from your circumstances. You know, things like work pressures, parenting demands, church obligations, household duties, divorcing, busy social calendars. This is not really where our feelings of overwhelm come from. They come from our thoughts about those circumstances. So at first, this seems like really bad news, or even seems kind of strange, like, what are you talking about? But in a way, this can be really liberating, again, to your thing on freedom, because while we can't always control our circumstances, you can always control your thoughts. So again, as we mentioned, this is why mindfulness practices are so powerful, because they can help you to do that. They can help you to cultivate that supervisor, if you will, that's that supervision that's keeping an eye on what you're thinking. And then that is in turn, your thoughts drive your feelings. And so then in this, so that's step one. And then in step two, it's really to identify the kinds of thoughts that are giving you trouble. And I'd like to talk about 3 particular types of thoughts that routinely cause feelings of overwhelm. And then once you've spotted those thoughts, then you can move into step 3, which is to take decisive action to eliminate those troublesome thoughts by replacing them with more helpful thoughts. Then from those helpful thoughts will flow feelings of calm, of clarity, of hope, of inspiration, of interest, of even humor or joy, serenity, right? So then positive feelings can begin to flow. And this will, of course, impact your ability to think creatively and problem solve the challenge that is before you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does make sense. And it's funny how I found that by going through this all. Do you know what I mean? If only I'd met you, Leslie, before, you could have given me that structure, because that is so invaluable. So for everyone that's listening, if you are kind of feeling a little bit kind of anxious or you've got overwhelmed, definitely follow those steps. Well, you know, in your step 2 with the different, what was it you mentioned again? The different,
right? There's three types of thoughts that routinely overwhelm us. And those are like should thoughts, perfectionistic thoughts, and people-pleasing thoughts.
Yeah. And again, I can relate to all those.
Yep. And sometimes we can put them all together. Right? We should be perfect because that makes people happy. Right? Because we get into less trouble. So they can all be happening even in one statement. But some examples of should thoughts are really that I should be able to do everything on my to-do list. You know, I should wake up early. I should exercise 5 days a week. I should be healthy. I shouldn't need to ask for help. This should be easier. So do like any of those things sound familiar?
Definitely. Definitely. And I'm sure everybody that's listening, everybody can relate to that. It sounds also, what I love about what you've expressed so far is you've got all this really great structure for understanding. So I can imagine you've got a whole toolbox of things that, you know, like how can you explain to us how you can help people? For people who are thinking, wow, this Leslie lady, she knows her stuff. How can you actually help people who could be listening to this?
Well, absolutely. I created, you know, just in the same way, I created my stress reset program, which is really a combination of 5 science-backed strategies that work together synergistically to help people really minimize the negative effects of stress so that they can make that bigger impact without sacrificing their health, their well-being, or their personal relationships. And the 5 science-backed strategies essentially help you to keep an eye on your stress levels, to regulate your emotions, to apply your strengths and core values, to achieve and maintain a flow state, and to talk to yourself in ways that promote this mental agility and emotional well-being. And today I'm sort of just giving you a taste of one of those kinds of strategies. Again, as a scientist, I'm always looking for those strategies or approaches that really that have been demonstrated to work. On average, people really do succeed with these strategies. I'm not just sort of making stuff up or, you know, saying this is what worked for me and maybe it'll work for you.
Yeah. No, I love it. And so if people listen to this who really want to reach out to you for help and support, how do they do that? What's the best way?
Well, the best thing to do really is to go to my website. And again, I think I gave you a link that you could find in the program, the show notes, for this strategy that I'm sharing with you today, the 3-step process for conquering feelings of overwhelm. And they can get that on my website. So they should go to BoschIntegrativewellness.com. And again, you spell Bosch like the appliances, BOSCH, BoschIntegrativewellness.com. And then, of course, the best thing to do is just to schedule a free 20-minute consultation. I love to meet new people. I love to learn more about the challenges that they're facing. And then I love to really sort of get them a sense of like a plan where they could start to get going and moving towards the goals that they want to achieve in their life, whether it's a DIY or a done with you, or again, a bespoke individualized coaching program. I have lots of different ways that I can help people get moving.
I love that. I love that. It sounds like you're doing some awesome work. So congratulations on what you're doing and helping a lot of people. It sounds like and I love how you know, if people are listening to this, you know, just reach out to Leslie and have a chat.
Absolutely.
And see how she can help, because it sounds like you've got lots of different ways, like you say, with the DIY or done with you, or you know, you've got it all kind of packaged up in a way that could be suitable to any individual kind of need, really. I suppose.
Right. And I've helped lots of clients deal with stressful situations, like, you know, dealing with the ever expanding work demands, having difficulty sleeping, dealing with the new health crisis, passing a high stakes exam, making a difficult decision, like whether or not to divorce, dealing with conflict, transitioning to motherhood, adjusting to a new leadership role, negotiating a raise, dealing with presentation anxiety, working with a difficult boss, caring for sick parents, transitioning to retirement, and ultimately really prioritizing self-care. So there's a lot of things, stressful situations that I've helped people get, you know, up-level their approach to it such that they can really get what they want.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely amazing. And like you say, there's so many different scenarios, isn't there, that can give us these sort of stressful times. And sometimes it is just like a moment in time. And
Yes.
It's working out how you then can deal with it. Because I know from myself point of view, like dealing with, I now know that I'm able to cope with a lot of things. I'm sure I don't want to tempt fate, because we all don't know what's around the corner. But there's already been a few examples of things that have happened since that, yes, they've not been nice, but I've dealt with them because I've been able to. So I think it's really important to learn these skills, and it sounds like you've got the real structure to help people. So I'd encourage anybody listening to this to reach out to Leslie. You've really provided some massive value on the podcast, so I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm just, again, such a fan of your the point of your podcast. It's just so lovely to inspire people to turn their adversity really into more passion and creativity in their lives. I'd love it.
And I often talk about my 3 pillars, which I haven't mentioned yet, and I don't know if you've heard of these before, and it's what has kind of given me equilibrium in my life. So I talk about freedom in love, which is around self-care and the love that we give out to the world. Because when I wasn't looking after myself and I was being that single parent, you know, the stress with everything that was happening, and like you say, pleasing everybody else, but not kind of looking after me, the seesaw balance was not quite right. And then freedom in money, because I think financial freedom, or not being financially stressed anyway, is important, no matter what anyone says. And then freedom in mind, which I know we've already discussed around. We've covered them all. But those have been the 3 things that have given me equilibrium in my life. And you know, the freedom in mind is we talk about mindset, there is so much more detail and depth to it than just the word mindset. But I think it's really important to kind of work on your mind, because like you mentioned before, our mind can escalate, or can create thoughts that can escalate into really things that are just completely unreasonable, or just not going to unreal, or out of reality. So it's important to be able to kind of stop yourself if you ever feel like you get in that way, and take a step back or a breath, and realize that it is just a thought, you know. So massive value in what you shared. Do reach out to Leslie. I always ask everybody on this podcast one question, so for my regular listeners, you'll know what it is coming up. But Leslie, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, for me, freedom really is about empowerment and mastery. So it's really about having the ability to show up at your best and do the things that you love well.
Yeah, love that. Love it. And I love that question as well, because I just love everybody's answer. I was like, I agree with that. You know what I mean? There's always so many different answers. But empowering, I think, is so important. And we all need to empower ourselves to take the right steps in our lives, I think. So if you really enjoyed this episode, do reach out to Leslie. All her website and was it the 3 steps? What was the 3 steps?
Right. The Conquer Overwhelm is on there. I also have a self-compassion that I think I shared with you that they can download. So there's a couple of things.
Yeah. So any of that, go and check. If you listen to this and love the show, have a look at the show notes. If you're listening to us on iTunes or in Spotify or any of the kind of podcast channels, and if you're watching us on YouTube, everything will be in the comments section. So give us some comments. Let us know if you've liked this episode. And a big thank you to Leslie for sharing all this value and also just everything that you're doing day to day to help more people. So it's been awesome connecting with you, and let's stay in touch.
Oh, yes, please, Anna. I really have enjoyed meeting you.
Brilliant. All right, great stuff. Thanks ever so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey. Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.